Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And we are here to do our reading wrap-up for the month of August. You had a very interesting reading month.
I had a fun reading month.
In August. And before we begin, we've had a rough 2 weeks, and I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who has left really nice comments and been very supportive and understanding. I have not posted as much as I usually do over the last 2 weeks, but everybody has understood, and it's meant a lot, so thank you.
And all the comments have been very beautiful, helpful, and it's amazing how much both Guinness and Jamie were loved by everybody. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's all we'll say about that, because I don't I don't want to be upset. No. So but I did just want to throw out a thank you. I read, I think, 8 books in the month of August before I sort of crashed at the end. How did you do?
I only got 6.
Yeah.
But I had a slower reading month, and obviously I stopped reading for a while.
Yeah.
But there were 6 really good books.
Yeah. And you didn't travel as much in the month of August as you usually would. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? How do you want to do this?
I don't care. You have 8.
I have 8.
Do you want
me to go first? Okay. So the first book I read in the month of August was This Other Eden by Paul Harding. I had wanted to read this in the first place when I first heard about it because it just sounded really interesting. And then it started getting really good reviews and just kept growing from there. And then it ended up on the Booker long list. I'll link the Booker long list reaction that I did down below. And I had been wanting to read it, or Paul Harding, because he is a Pulitzer winner. And we're going to talk about him a little more with the next book. But I did really like this book a lot. I think I like his work, or I admire his work more than I love it. But I really liked it. I think it's probably got a good shot at being on the shortlist for the Booker Prize. If you're unfamiliar, it is inspired by a true story of sort of mixed race people living on an island off the coast of Maine in the early 1900s. They had been there for a long time, and they are kicked off of the island. And it's about what happens to them and their lives on the island in many tricky ways. It also deals with the concept of eugenics, which is a very painful but real thing people studied and believed in for a long time. And yeah, I would recommend it. I know a lot of people have read this as part of the Booker long list at this point, but it's a great book, and I would recommend it if you haven't. Paul Harding is a great writer, so can't really go wrong with that.
Awesome.
Yeah. What do you have first?
So the month of August, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to read all about elephant. Yes. So elephant books.
Thematic t-shirt wearing.
My pride elephant shirt.
Yeah.
I love elephants. They're just very large, compassionate animals, and
very intelligent.
Incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I read The Elephant Company by Vicki, Constantine, Croke, and I loved this book. And I think my stepmother read it too, and we both really enjoyed it. Yeah. And it wasn't as dry as I thought an elephant book was going to be. So this kind of started my whole journey. But what I did first was, it was called Modoc, the world's... Sorry, I got to read this. It's a long title. Yeah. Modoc, the true story of the greatest elephant in the world. And it was written by Paul Helfer. And it is a true story, so nonfiction, about a boy who was Jewish in Germany, and during the World War II, his father and grandfather were both elephant trainers, and he was learning to be an elephant trainer. So the day he was born, Modoc was born at the same time, like an hour apart.
Wow. And I forgot that detail,
Yeah, so the boy grew up knowing Modoc. Well, Modoc was going to be sold to a circus. He did not want, because his father died, and he didn't want that. So he kind of stole Modoc, and they go on this incredible, fun journey, and ends up in India in a elephant sanctuary where they really hold elephants of very high praise. And it goes on, they go through this journey on a boat. All my books I read, I made sure no elephants died or horribly died. And so this one, they go through this great journey with each other. And it's almost a little unbelievable how crazy this journey was.
When you were describing it to me, I was like, and this is nonfiction?
I mean, I'm sure it's based on a true story with some fabrications, but I think for the most part, I think most of it was kind of true.
Yeah, I mean, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. So beautiful book. I absolutely loved it. I think it's in my top 5 for the year.
I know we have been looking for a copy of this book. We've been in a bunch of used bookstores lately, and I think we might just have to bite the bullet and order a new copy
I'll
of it.
I'll give it a little time. But...
but we've been. That's how much he liked it. Yeah. It's like it's being added to the library.
Yeah.
So
beautiful book. I love it.
And it sounds really interesting. It did sound really compelling. I don't know that I could read it. It sounds a little bit emotional in a lot of ways, and I don't know that. Maybe in the beginning of August, not now.
And I did read in the beginning of August, and Modoc, he was burned really bad, but he was saving somebody's life. So it's actually beautiful when they describe that, but he got burned. And then a drunk man came in and tortured him and did some harm. He went through a lot of hardship in his life, and I think he's in the 70s when he did die. But his younger years, his middle years, and even his final years, he was very taken care of. But there was just this really bad moment in a circus. He was burned and tortured by a drunk man. But it was a very hard part to read, but it's part of his story. And I recommend it if you like animals and you like a compassionate story of treating animals like a family member, as like obviously we do. It is a beautiful story. So,
and I remember somebody asked you when you were telling them about Modoc, oh, does the elephant die? I can't read it. And you said, well, the elephant does die, but only in that this took place a long time ago. Right. So it's not like,
He dies in the end, but he's very old, and he had and in the end, he had this like beautiful life given to him.
Yeah. So that does sound really good.
Yeah.
No, okay, let's get off that topic.
Next, what do you got?
Next, I continued with my Paul Harding train. I read Tinkers, which is the book that won a Pulitzer. So I have a hardcover that came from the UK. This is not the one you traditionally see, but I kind of was looking for hardcover editions of Pulitzer books, and this is pretty much the only way you'll find a hardcover of Tinkers. I did a whole deep dive of this, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. I'll link that down below. The story of how this won, how it was published, and then how it won a Pulitzer is mind-blowing.
I'm traveling, and Greg calls. I've got to tell you the story.
I did do that.
It's pretty amazing.
Because I had to tell somebody, and who was the better person to tell than Joel? So, So I did. I called him, was like, do you have a second? I gotta tell you. So the story is wild. It's a great book. Again, I think I admire Paul Harding's writing more than I love it, but I do think it's a really great book, and I would recommend it. And again, you can check out the Pulitzer Deep Dive for more information. The way I would describe his writing is sort of like Marilyn Robinson and William Faulkner somehow had a child, and that could be Paul Harding. So, check out the video for more on that. What do you have next?
My next one was Elephant in a Garden by Michael Morpurgo. And it was this is a fiction based on a true story.
Yes.
But it was based, I think, in World War I, but this came in World War II. Again, a German woman worked in the farm because all the men had to go off to war. So the woman worked in a zoo. And so when the bombs were going to get dropped in their little village, she says, I need to take the elephant. I cannot leave the elephant here behind to die. Because what they were going to do is kill all the animals. Because if the bombs came and they got out, they would be another very large terror to the town.
Yeah.
So she takes the elephant and they go...
I would be thrilled to find an elephant outside my kitchen window. I'd be a lot more thrilled to find an elephant than a lot of other animals.
So they kept the elephant in the garden. And then when the bombs were coming, the elephant ran away, but they caught up to it and got the elephant. And it's their journey on going through. They meet a American who was not an ally to them. And that American, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. And he helped them navigate. He had this special compass or a compass. And but the compass gets them in trouble, and they're almost all about ready to be like in lots of trouble. But the elephant does go on to have a really good life. In the end, you don't know what happens to the elephant, and then the story comes around and brings this beautiful ending to the story. And there's another one that just really made me sob.
And you can tell because we immediately started looking for a copy of this one as well, and we found it in our local used bookstore too.
And I really like the cover. How beautiful is that?
Really pretty.
So that was my other one. I recommend both my books right now. They were both really, really great books.
Yeah.
So.
And did Lona read his? I think your stepmother read that too, did she? Or am I thinking of a different one that's coming?
I think she read it too.
I think she did, and she really liked it.
She really liked it.
She's actually read a couple of these elephant books with Joel, so I think that's where I'm getting, it's all blurring in my head. So my next one. So when I was getting ready to do a Friday Reads, I had read This Other Eden, Tinkers, and Wandering Souls by Cecile Penn. So I did a poll to see if people could guess which book had caused emotional damage for me. It was Wandering Souls. 60% of people correctly guessed. And when I finished this book, so this is funny. When I was researching Tinkers, I had to call Joel to tell him, like, you're not going to believe this. When I finished Wandering Souls, I had to get up. Thank God you were home that day.
Yeah. So
his office is downstairs. So I had to get up, walk downstairs, and be like, I need a hug. Because I was sobbing.
It was a devastating story.
I was sobbing, like snot running down my face, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, I was sobbing. This is a beautiful book. I don't say that to make it sound like this isn't something. Because it's beautiful is part of it. I mean, it's sad, but there's something really beautiful, and I think that's what makes it so emotional. Yeah. So this is a story of 3 siblings who are orphaned during the process of their family trying to escape from Vietnam during the war. And they were supposed to travel separately from their parents. They had younger siblings. And the parents were supposed to take the younger siblings, and then the oldest daughter was supposed to get the other 2 siblings out. They make it to their destination, but the parents and the younger siblings do not. So they were originally supposed to try to end up in the United States because they had an uncle there. But obviously, this is like a 15-year-old girl. She has no idea how to navigate bureaucracy. A lot of people don't even know what to do with all these refugees who are coming out of the country. So they end up in London, and it's about everything that happens to them over the years. It's about how this daughter essentially has to just stop her childhood right there and become like a parental figure, but she's not a parent. So there are a lot of struggles that resonated with me because of my older sister. It resonated because you had to cook for your older brothers when you were a child. It resonated our foster son. And, it's about them trying to find a place in London. And also kind of wondering what might have been, and family, and it's a really beautiful, just absolutely gorgeous book. I cannot recommend it enough. I think this is something that I'm going to be recommending for a long time. Just be ready to cry. And again, good I read it in the beginning of the month, because that would have been a lot by the end of the month. And one thing I love about the cover, it has the phases of the moon, but there are little faces hidden in some of them. You see that?
I know, I love them.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I think when we saw that book, that is the first thing I noticed was, oh look, it has the phases of the moon.
That's right. You pointed it out to me because I just thought, oh, phases of the moon, that's cool. And you actually looked at it. Yeah. So that was my next one. It is really good. I would absolutely recommend it. It was longlisted for the Women's Prize, did not make the shortlist, and honestly, I think that's kind of a crime. And I can't wait to see what Cecile Penn does next. This is a debut. This was a debut, and it's really good. Actually, Tinkers was a debut as well. So I've got a couple of debut books.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I got one more coming. So what do you have next?
Next, I have The Elephant Whisperer, My Life with the Herd in Tura Tura by Lawrence Anthony. The man was a conservationist in Africa, and he had a big ranch and lots of land, and he had horses and whatnot. And somebody says, oh, I have a herd of elephant for you for free. And he goes, what's the catch? Well, they're very mischievous elephants. They were completely wild. They can break out of anything. If you ever watch The Elephant Whisperer on
Hulu? I think we watched that on Hulu.
Narrated by Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
They actually show how an elephant can escape an electric fence because they're that smart.
It's really interesting.
These elephants would always break through the electric fence or break through the wall and get out. So it was just this man's life, and he had the herd for several years. And just what he learned about the elephants and learned about himself being around elephants. Again, a very good book. Wasn't high on my list. My first two were 5s. This was probably about a 3.5, 4. But really good. Just knowing how smart elephants are and what they can do and they're capable of doing.
They're sassy.
But yet they can be so compassionate.
Yeah.
So
for sure. It reminds both of us of Guinness, actually, which is especially the baby one.
Guinness and a baby elephant would be so freaking cute together.
Yeah. They would play so hard.
Yeah. So our image with us and the dogs is Guinness would play with the baby elephant while Jamie rode on the back of a giraffe barking at everybody.
Rode on the back of a full-grown elephant barking at a giraffe.
Barking at a giraffe, that's it.
Yeah, so, that is exactly what would happen if we had ever met a family of elephants with our babies. But anyway.
Excellent. So that was good.
That was good. All right, my next one was actually Absolution by Alice McDermott, which is really fun to play with in the light with. So this is coming out November 7th from FSG. I continued the Vietnam theme after finishing Wandering Souls by going into this one. And what's really unique about this book, which again is not out yet, but pre-order or check your local library, see if they're going to be getting a copy, is that it takes the perspective of women during the Vietnam War, and not women who are like back in the United States waiting for news of their husband overseas. Women who are actually in Vietnam and who are finding ways to be useful and support the war effort and do charity work for people who have been displaced by the war and all that. And it's also set really early on in the Vietnam War. Like usually I think when you read a Vietnam book, it's set when things are already out of control, everything's bad and mad and violent, and this is set when Kennedy is still president. And there are rumors that Kennedy is going to slow down the war effort and withdraw a lot of people from the territory. Obviously that ended up not happening because Kennedy was assassinated, and then Johnson ended up escalating the war. You've read a book, you know. But it's a really interesting book. I think, again, this is something I admire more than I love, but I think it's really smart. The opening chapter of this book is like a really gorgeous short story that I would absolutely read again and again. And Alice McDermott is a great writer for that. I think this is a book that a lot of people are going to be talking about by the end of the year. It's something that has Pulitzer potential. And we'll see how all of that goes, because a lot will depend on how this lands once it actually comes out. But I will be shocked if this is not a book that a lot of people talk about, because I think it's just really well done and interesting, and there's a lot to talk about, and I have no one to talk to about it because nobody else has read it yet. So hopefully that will change by November. So what do you have next?
My next one, we're staying with the elephant theme, but not elephants. One of my favorite movies is The Elephant Man. And so I read the Reminiscences of the Elephant Man by Sir Frederick Treves. And I love the movie because to me, it's like you don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge anybody by the way they look. Because the Elephant Man was very deformed, but he is a very smart, intelligent, caring, lovely man. And just how Frederick Treves introduced him back into society from being a circus freak was really beautiful, and how he gained friendships through notable people. And in the movie, it was with a actress who was Anne Bancroft.
Anne Bancroft,
she was a delight.
Yeah. And is Frederick Treves the one Anthony Hopkins plays?
Yes.
So if you are unfamiliar with young Anthony Hopkins, watch The Elephant Man, because...
Hot.
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins was a hottie. Yeah, just saying.
So I love the movie. I thought the book, I was going on a short trip, so it's like a 72-page book, and I knew I could read it that night while in the hotel room. So it's just a fun book, but it follows along the movie, and I like the movie and I like the book.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, my next one was actually on audio, and it's the only one I read this month that I don't have a copy of, which is kind of interesting. It's Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, and narrated by Meryl Streep. She does a really good job. She does a very, very, very good job narrating the audio, but that's, predictable because it's Meryl Streep. And I had been on a journey with this. I've already kind of covered. I read an Ann Patchett book and hated it, just absolutely hated it a while ago, somewhere around like 2009, and kind of thought, well, I'm never reading another one. But over the years, people have recommended her books to me. They've talked really highly of her books, and I've just always kind of passed them off. But then I started following her bookstore on Instagram, and she makes a lot of appearances, and she's just very charming. And then very sweet, because now I've made Joel go down a rabbit hole watching a lot of the videos. I watch the videos next to it so he gets to hear them. Yeah, but anyway, she's just got this really charming presence. So it got me to think, I should try another one of her books. So I did Tom Lake, and I really liked it. I think it's a very good book. It's about a woman in a cherry orchard, and there are lots of jokes about Chekhov, because he has a play called The Cherry Orchard. So there are jokes about that, but it's much more inspired by Our Town by Thornton Wilder. Ann Patchett did an interview with New York Times Book Review where she talked about how she was inspired by that play, and it's a really good book about life and how you end up in a place that can be very different from where you originally set out to go, and how people might not necessarily understand the choices that you make in life, but they were good for you and you're totally happy with the way things turned out. And it resonated very deeply and profoundly with me. And I thought it was a really beautiful and sharply observed book, especially when you consider that it's about a mother and motherhood, and Ann Patchett does not have children. And I just think that's interesting. And people will frequently assume you can only really write things that you know about, and you can only know about something if you have experience. But clearly, she understands a lot about the dynamics of those relationships, and that was really interesting as well. So I really liked that, Tom Lake by Ann Patchett.
Cool. She was really fun to watch on Instagram, and she always has her dog with her.
Yeah.
What's her dog's name?
Sparky Von Davender, which I thought she'd made up the last name Von Davender. Like, I thought she just decided, I'm going to name my dog Sparky Van Davender, and that's it. Turns out her husband's last name is Van Davender, so she just likes to say the full name. But yeah, Sparky Van Davender. And a lot of the time when she'll do her lay down diaries, or just when she'll introduce, every Friday she does, like, if you don't know this book, it's new to you, and she'll have Sparky, and she'll sit Sparky down on the table on top of the books, and Sparky just sits politely and waits. Yeah, it's really cute. So, yeah. What do you have next?
My next book was The Cowboy and His Elephant by Malcolm McPherson. And I wasn't going to read this, but then I kind of read what it was about, and I got very intrigued. So Bob Norris, who is the owner of the Elephant Amy, is a cowboy in Colorado. Bob Norris was the original Marlboro Man. And he was on all the Marlboro signs, and he was a rancher. He never really wanted to be the Marlboro Man.
Yeah.
But he was, they did a photo shoot on his property, and they had this like city slicker boy come out dressed up as a cowboy. And Bob's like, oh, that is all wrong. And it's like, he's not even dressed right. He doesn't even smoke right. So Bob just went out and did it. And he is a very handsome man.
Yeah, speaking of men who were handsome when they were young. So.
Yeah. And so Bob went to show him how to do it. And the director's like, why don't you be the Marlboro Man? And
but I'm torn on this because I don't like cigarettes.
Yeah,
but anyway. So.
And actually, Bob Norris really wasn't either. And actually, probably midway through his older years, he didn't realize smoking is really horrible for you and stopped. And because he stopped smoking, he says, why should I advertise this? And so he stepped down from being the Marlboro Man. So,
okay.
But he had a chance to get an elephant that was orphaned in a coal. A coal is when the entire herd is slaughtered, but they leave one alive and they sell it.
Oh, you told me about this, and I blocked it right out.
And that was the hardest part of the book. But Amy went to live on this ranch, and he wasn't going to buy her, but at the end he bought her. And so Amy lived on the ranch. She actually learned to be more like a horse than an elephant. And which was kind of endearing, but when it got too much for Amy to live on the ranch, he had a hard time finding a placement for her because she was ornery. She was misbehaving, wouldn't listen to anybody except for Bob. And most people couldn't handle her. And finally, she did end up in a circus and with an elephant trainer who is really compassionate on elephants. And went on to become a circus elephant. 10 years goes by and she's doing it, and Bob says, I'm going to go up and see Amy in the circus. And he's like, actually, this man thought more of his elephant than his wife. That's the part of this book that got me.
Ouch for the wife, but that's cute.
But she was supportive.
Okay.
And he was in the audience, and she likes cinnamon rolls. So he brought cinnamon rolls for the elephant. So she was doing her routine, and she cut a sniff of cinnamon rolls. Her trunk automatically goes up and is just like this, and then just goes for the smell of the cinnamon rolls, sees Bob and runs up to him, puts her head in his lap, and it's just this very tender, emotional moment.
Yeah.
And he's like, she remembers me.
Oh.
And
that's cute.
Really was a kind of a beautiful moment. And she went on doing very well. But then another person's, they's like, well, she's kind of rambunctious. So another person actually trained elephants to go back into the wild, which isn't easy for a elephant in captivity for a very long time to go back into the wild.
Yeah.
And he actually had a farm where he could take them back to let the herds run and then release them back in the wild. And so that's how Amy got
I didn't know you could even do that.
Yeah,
wow.
It's rare, but this guy learned how to do it and release them back into the wild. So all this said, I really don't like zoos and aquariums that have big mammals and animals.
Yeah.
When they're out of their environment. You can't have a big enough area for an elephant to go off and do what they want to do in a zoo or in a circus. They perform, they go back into a cage.
Yeah, and they should not have to spend a whole day giving people rides.
And an elephant goes back and forth on their feet because they don't lay down, but they go back and forth. But when they start going back and forth too much, they get in this mindset and they can't relax. And then they start rocking back and forth, and it's really hard to break them out of that. And that's what a lot of the sanctuaries that I want to go visit in Thailand some year when you can. They help rehabilitate elephants that are chained up, locked up in a cage to teach them how to go out and relax and get back into their society and their herds. So that being said, I don't like zoos and circuses, but I understood a lot of these books are very old. They weren't modern time books, but I still wanted to read to know kind of how they dealt with a lot of these things.
Yeah.
But I liked the book where they released them back into their herd and the wild. So that's my PSA on elephants.
Yeah, that's true. So we're planning our next adventure, and then the one after that is basically we need to get Joel to meet an elephant. So we'll see how we do with that.
In time.
It'll happen. Hopefully gay elephants. You never know. Unsurprisingly, my next one was Our Town by Thornton Wilder, because obviously, as I said, Tom Lake was really heavily inspired by this. And in that New York Times Book Review podcast episode where she talked about the inspiration of Tom Lake, she talked a lot about Our Town, which I read when I was about 20 or 21 and hated. It's very stylistically different from a lot of plays because there's a stage manager who is giving directions and will, like, when somebody's ready to come in for a scene, they'll be like, all right, Joel, come on out, and things like that. And then the person playing Joel would come out. It's an interesting way of doing it. I think I still admire this more than I love it, but I do have a new sense of appreciation for it based on everything Ann Patchett said about it, and based on the fact that I'm also 20 years older at this point. And it is a play about life and death in a small town in America at the turn of the century, and it's very well done for that. But just because I read Tom Lake, I went back to this because I still owned the copy that I purchased to read when I was about 20 or 21. So I read it, and it's very short. So
you could put that in your pocket.
I could put it in my pocket. I'd have to fold it, which would make me really upset. But that was my next one. What do you got?
All right. My last one was not an elephant book. And a lot of people recommended it to me, and I've read it, and I'm not sure why. But it was The Sea Elephant by Shastri Akella.
Shastri Akella.
Sorry Akella. If I pronounced that wrong. It was about a boy in India who, obviously, he was gay, and his father was horrible to him. So he went to a boarding school. He got bullied and picked on. And so he joined a street performing group that would do plays and skits on Indian folklore or
mythology.
Mythology. And one of the plays that they did was called The Sea Elephant, about sea elephants that would come out and take kids out and drown them. And that's how the book started. And it's like, where is this going? And he goes through a lot. And then it goes, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but they go through a lot of evolutions of being gay and what it means. The last maybe quarter of the book got really hard for me to read because of the subject matter. But then it just kind of goes off and everything's good. So it's a very confusing book for me, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not exactly sure what the appeal of it was. So if anybody out there who has read The Sea Elephant, please let me know, what am I missing? So
yeah, and I haven't read it, so I can't say, but it sounded interesting. We'll see.
Yeah,
if you have thoughts,
I would throw the last part out, but I'm afraid that's kind of a spoiler, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we can avoid that. So
if you've read it, hey, hit me up.
This guy,
him.
All right, my next one was Temple Folk by Aaliyah Bilal. This is something that I saw after I put together my list of books I'm looking forward to in the second half of 2023. And then the author actually happened to reach out to me and said, hey, I love your book reviews. I would love to send you a copy of my book in exchange for a fair review. And I said, sure, because I had actually just discovered the book and was really interested in it. So these are short stories that are about the Black Muslim experience in the United States. And they kind of go back and forth a little bit over the last 40 years or so. I'm looking at you as if you know the answer and you didn't read the book. I'm sorry. But they kind of go back and forth a little bit. And they really do cover a wide range of experiences and levels of faith and different ways of interpreting religion, which is something that I think everybody can relate to, not just if you have grown up Black and Muslim in this country. And it's really interesting. And I think when you see characters like this, they are usually not the center of the book. They're usually on the periphery a little bit. They're usually treated very stereotypically. So it's nice to read a collection where they are front and center and you're sort of given the whole span of understanding. I really appreciated that. There's a tendency to want to treat a community like a monolith, and that this just doesn't work. Not everybody is the same. And this is another debut, and it's kind of surprising that it is a debut because the writing is very confident. The writing is very beautiful. It almost reminds me of Jhumpa Lahiri in that it is very elegant and precise. I will say at times maybe a little too precise, but I really enjoy the collection, and every story is different enough that it really holds your attention. I did have to read the last three. I think it was the last three stories by audio because this is what I was reading when we lost Jamie. And I was having a really hard time picking the book back up. So I pivoted to audio for the last three stories and kind of powered through them. But there are really beautiful stories in here. And I was glad that I finished it. And I really did enjoy the book. So I'm glad that Aaliyah Bilal reached out and that I had the opportunity to read it because I would definitely recommend this. It was a great collection and it is out now.
But what was the movie we watched on Muslim faith and their religion, how his religion was, Breaking Fast.
Breaking Fast, yeah. A gay romance movie, and it was so cute.
It was very, very good.
Yeah, because he is very religious, and he meets a white man who was in the military and had spent time, so he was familiar with Ramadan, so they meet every night to break fast together. It was just a really sweet... Yeah. It was on Hulu. I don't know if it still is, but I would recommend it. That was a really cute movie.
It was really good. Yeah. That's what that was reminding me of when you're talking about their faith and everything, and they're learning about it. So, a great movie, too. So.
That is a great movie. Breaking Fast.
I'm done.
You're done.
I'm done with my books.
You're done.
I had a great month.
All All right, so I only have one more. Brickmakers by Selva Almada, translated by Annie McDermott. Sorry, I had to look for it on the cover. I had started reading this before we lost Jamie, and I'm really glad that I got halfway through, because there's no way I would have been able to finish it had I started after, because this is a very violent book. A lot of bad things happen. Bad things happen to dogs twice in the first 50 pages, and that definitely I would not have been able to get through that. It's sort of like, it's when I first read the description of the book, I remember thinking, oh, kind of like Romeo and Juliet, and then it makes a direct correlation later on in the description about Capulets and Montagues, because they're two families. Both of the fathers are brickmakers, which is where the title comes from. They feud, and it's about toxic masculinity, essentially. Like, you have these two men who are just fighting with each other, and they don't even really remember why they're fighting anymore, but they just keep perpetuating these systems. Their fathers were probably abusive to them, and they're perpetuating those same systems, and now they have sons, and they're perpetuating the system on this, and the sons are growing up and perpetuating all the same systems, and that's kind of what the book is about. And it's a tiny little thing, and actually, thank goodness it's a tiny little thing, because I don't think I would have been able to push to finish it if it wasn't. And it's funny, because I told Joel after I finished it, it's like, I remembered that there was a thing about the sons being in love, but that hasn't happened, and I'm almost done. Like, there are 30 pages left, and there hasn't been any gay stuff. And then it happens in the last 20 pages. So that's not a spoiler, because the description of the book says that one of the sons was in love with a son from the other family. And as the book opens, so Pajaro Timai is the son from one family. He falls in love with Angel Marciano from the other family. Angel's older brother and Pajaro get into a fight at a fair underneath the Ferris wheel, and they're dying underneath the Ferris wheel because they've stabbed each other. That's how the book opens. And everything plays out in flashbacks back and forth to how their families got to this point, how they got to it, and the quote-unquote gay stuff doesn't actually happen until the last 20 pages. But it is there. It's a good book. I'm glad that I managed to read it. I'm glad that I managed to finish it, but it is a difficult read. There are a lot of triggers in here, but it is a very interesting book, and I would recommend it to you. And again, it's really small, but difficult because of the content that is inside of it. And that was everything for August for me. So you don't have plans for what you're going to do?
I don't have plans, but there's a couple books I've read in the past of national park thrillers and murder mystery kind of things.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of continuing on that.
Yeah.
But I really need something happy too.
Yeah. I think we're both kind of in that place. I did start, so I got access to Jhumpa Lahiri's new book, Roman Stories, on NetGalley 2-3 days ago, and I was really excited about it. And I did start reading it this morning, and I'm liking it a lot. But I think I'm going to pivot to happy things on audio. So I think what I'm going to try to do is happy, escapist, cinnamon bun stuff on audio, and then try to get some actual, because I had been planning to read Rabbit Run and start ripping off the Band-Aid of John Updike. I've been resistant to it, but that bookish bear and I had agreed that in September we would check in with each other. So we're planning on reading that. So assuming I can get my head together by the end of this Labor Day weekend, we will be doing that. And then it's going to be interesting because the E.M. Forster read-along is doing a passage to India this month, and I completely fell off the wagon with the August selection for the Queer TBR tackle, for obvious reasons. And but A Passage to India is the only E.M. Forster book I did not finish. So it'll be interesting to see if I squeeze it in and if I have better luck with it this time. So that's everything I have for September.
Nice.
And we're just escapist, fun, cinnamon bun stuff in general.
I am reading Bathhouse. It's a gay thriller in a bathhouse. So it just came available to me, so I figured I should read it while I have it available.
Yeah.
So I'll see how it is.
I think my next audio, when I'm ready for an audio, is going to be, I have access to the new Anne Cleeves book with Matthew Benn. So a gay mystery.
Yeah.
And I liked the first two. I didn't love them, but I liked them enough to do this one. So I think that's probably going to be my next audio when I'm ready. So,
Nice.
Yeah. But that's August, and a little peek into what's ahead in September.
Yep.
Thank you. I love your gay elephant journey.
Thank you.
And I think that's everything, right?
That's it.
That's it. So, as always, thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And again, really thank you for all of the support, the patience, the understanding, and just the love that you have shared for Jamie. And a lot of people shared that they have also lost pets recently. And our hearts go out to all of you as well, because we are very familiar with how difficult it is. So thank you.
Thank you.
And as always, we will be back. Until next time, happy reading.
Bye.